First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you and have an interview with you. Uh, my first question is, since 2011, the responsibility for security has been gradually, shifted to Afghan forces, and ISAF's mission. It has changed from combat-centric role to focusing on the training, advising, and assisting forces. So, do you think it has worked or not?
Last year, this time, we had a big discussion with our partners, with our superior headquarters, whether the Afghan National Security Forces would be able to take the lead to provide security in the country. And the commander of ISAF asked 3 questions. Will they be able to provide security for the country now? Will they be able to provide security for the upcoming elections? And will they be able to take full responsibility after the end of the ISAF mission? And at that time, he answered all 3 questions with a clear yes. And look where we are today. We have seen that the security forces were able to protect the people of Afghanistan during the elections. That was a very, very big success. So they have proven that they can do it, and this is the success of the Afghan National Security Forces, and it gives a clear signal towards the people of Afghanistan that the security forces are ready to take full responsibility after the end of the ISAF mission.
Okay. Late last year, there was an interview in BBC. President Karzai said something, and I quote. He said, "On the security front, the entire NATO exercise was one that caused Afghanistan a lot of suffering, a lot of loss of life, and no gains because the country is not secure." I mean, he meant to say ISAF has failed to bring stability to Afghanistan. How do you react to that?
It is not up to me to make comments on the president of Afghanistan as an ISAF spokesperson. What we see is that we have come a long way since 2002. We now have provided credible security forces. The society has moved on. We see in many different areas progress, development, and we see that many people in this country are looking into the future with more confidence, and that is my response to that question.
Okay, thank you. International community, has paid a huge price for its earlier involvement, intervention in Afghanistan. And according to data collected by the Brookings Institution, more than 3,300 coalition troops, I think more than that, have died since the intervention in October 2001. I mean, it raises a lot of questions about the achievement and purpose of this military intervention, particularly since the security situation is still not so good. What's your take on this?
We came to this country to make sure that Afghanistan would not be used as a launching pad for international terrorism in the future. That was the core reason why we came to Afghanistan. And the international community has paid a big price, and so have the Afghan people. So this is a strong bond. We both have paid a huge price, and so we are now committed to make this a success, to stay focused, to provide security for the people in the future. We are committed to address the losses, the suffering, to make that a cause, a good reason to the people in the future. We need to make sure that that these losses, this suffering, pays at the end for the peace in this country.
Oh, there have been recently, we also did a report, there have been reports about the secret prisons in Kandahar and Helmand, where Afghans and some foreign officials have been detained by ISAF, NATO forces. I mean, there's a committee, government committee, which Karzais instituted, that confirmed the presence of these prisons. So, as a sovereign country, do you think it's, good to have these prisons in these places?
This is under investigation right now, and the only thing I can tell you at the moment is that ISAF is fully cooperative with the Afghan authorities, and that this issue is now on the top level, and they will make their final findings public, and then we will see what comes out of it.
Do you agree with this committee which has confirmed the presence?
Again, it is right now under investigation, and we do cooperate with the respective authorities.
Okay. This year we'll see the withdrawal of majority of forces, international forces. Do you think this proposed military exit has been timed well? Is it right time to move on for the international community, because the situation is still not stable enough?
We have seen that the Afghan National Security Forces are able to provide security for the country. And I would like to mention that we are not withdrawing. What we are doing is we are transforming the current mission into a new mission. The current mission, ISAF, will transform into resolute support.
Yeah.
And that is what we are doing. So we will see a different approach to the security requirements in the future. And so it is not a withdrawal, it's a transformation. And we are going to focus no longer on training individual soldiers on doing what they have to do, like handling a weapon, but we will focus on streamlining the processes and procedures on the ministry level and on highest levels in corps and army, and that is the new approach. And I think we are at a point where we can start to shift our efforts.
Talking of Afghan forces, in recent months we have seen them doing a commendable job in protecting citizens, and like for example in elections, they did a really amazing job, remarkable job. So do you think, realistically speaking, do you think they're ready to take the next step, a next giant leap in terms of taking on the responsibility from international forces? Do you genuinely feel they are ready?
We have no reason to believe that they are not ready, and they've proven that they can do it. There are some areas we would like to continue what we have started earlier. For example, in the fields of logistics, for example, medical care, for example, countering improvised explosive devices. These are the kinds of fields where we want to continue our assistance, even in the future. And this is what we are going to do, but in general, we are very confident that they can take full responsibility to provide security across the country.
ISAF's mission, in Afghanistan will end this year. However, as agreed in the Chicago summit in 2012, they will lead a new mission to continue training, advising, assisting forces. Can you brief us a little bit about how this training and how this new strategy will be?
We are going to focus on the ministerial level and on core level of both police and army. And what we are going to do is we would like to draw the attention on the processes which are necessary to sustain security forces. And let me give you an example. If you have a field commander, he needs a new vehicle, for example, then he has to pass this request, the chain of command, till it reaches the ministerial level. Then somebody in the ministry needs to sign it and said, yes, we need a new vehicle for this unit in the field. Then he has to pass this paper to the one guy who has the budget. Then the budget guy needs to say, I have the money to buy a new car. Then he has to take this paper to the one who has the authority to do procurement. And this guy needs to procure this car. And then this guy needs to make sure that this car ends up at the very spot where there is a demand to have a new car. So this is what we call the process. And it goes from the very top to the very low level. And these are the kinds of subjects we are focusing on under the new mission. We want to make these processes as smooth as possible in order to make sure that the security forces are sustainable in the future.
I mean, what is the legal basis, for ISAF NATO forces to stay in Afghanistan? And currently it's the United Nations Security Council resolutions, which allow international forces to operate at the request of Afghan government in here. So will the future, this BSA, military agreement, or the same Security Council resolutions?
What we need to stay in Afghanistan is a legal framework.
Yeah.
You can also call it an invitation from the government, from the people of Afghanistan. And this legal framework is also necessary because it gives us at home, in our respective home countries, the legal right to send troops abroad. So that is important. Without this legal framework, we can't stay for legal reasons. And that is our requirement. That is the reason why it is so important for us to get this bilateral security agreement signed, and for all the nations, it's the NATO Status of Forces Agreement. That is behind it. We stay optimistic that we get both agreements signed in the future. And in the meantime, we continue our preparations at the headquarters for the new mission.
Talking of BSA, the stalemate or BSA continues. Even though all the candidates, presidential candidates, have assured a promise that they will be signing it. Why did Karzai refuse to sign this agreement? I mean, he had some reservations regarding some clauses in the agreement. Do you think his reservations, his fears were legitimate, or he was just wanting to not sign this and pass it on to his successor?
That is a question I can't answer. That is something you should ask the president of Afghanistan. Why we need this agreement is pretty obvious, and that is all I can say.
Can you briefly tell us, what kind of training will this be? I mean, you'll be training Afghan forces. This mission will shift training. So what kind of training and what kind of arms will they get, and what kind of weapons and all in this training?
We provided the equipment for the Afghan National Forces in the future, in the past, and we are going to do so in the future. But it's a process. It's a mutual process of equipping the security forces. We have different groups where we discuss what is necessary to do certain tasks. And this comes all together in a paper called the Tashkil. And it is a paper where you match personnel with equipment. And we review this Tashkil on a regular basis, and then we make the decision whether we need to adapt the Tashkil or whether we can continue with the Tashkil into the future. And this is how it works. And just to make it even clearer, it is not only that you deliver a piece of equipment. You have to establish the training so that the soldiers are able to handle the new equipment. You have to establish the logistical chain in order to make sure that you have spare parts for this new equipment. You need to train mechanics. And so this is a very complex subject. And it is not only that you give something, it has to fit into your purpose, it has to add to security, and it has to be embedded into an entire concept of training and equipping.
Well, there has been a remarkable improvement in security situation in recent, months or years. But still, there are incidents like we saw in the run-up to elections. There have been spate of terrorist incidents in the country. How can these attacks be prevented? Like, is it a part of the strategy to? Is there any plan and policy to kind of stop and prevent these attacks?
All the people we work with are very dedicated to prevent attacks to make Afghanistan a safer place in the future. Does that mean that we are able to prevent any single attack in the future? No. What we can do is we can establish processes, we can streamline our procedures, we can work closer with all the other relevant agencies, with all the other relevant ministries in order to prevent attacks in the future. That is what we can do, and that is what we are doing right now and in the future.
The release of Bagram prisoners, it was widely condemned and criticized by the international community. They said these are the hardened criminals, hardened terrorists, they pose threat to security. Afghan government said the cases were not thrown against them. Can you tell us what is the actual story about this?
We made it clear from the beginning that we want the process with the prisoners according to the Afghan law. That was our concern. We have made that clear. There was a different decision, and that's all I can say.
Okay. The recent attacks, especially in Kabul, there's still mystery, they're still shrouded in mystery. We still don't know who the perpetrator is. Afghan government, they have often blamed Pakistan's intelligence network for orchestrating these attacks. What is ISAF's position on this? Do they have, who do they believe is behind these attacks?
Every single time when we see attacks, there is a thorough, in-depth investigation. And what we have seen in the past is that our Afghan partners are doing this investigation in depth, and that they are able to draw the right consequences out of it. And it would be premature at this time to make comment on that specific event you just mentioned. It is too early to draw consequences out of it, and we still have to wait until we have more of the findings on the table.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, he is always talking about improving ties with Afghanistan. In every meeting he says we have to improve ties. But still there are attacks, rocket attacks we see from that side. Do you think their approach and their intentions are sincere regarding peace process in Afghanistan?
again, I'm not in the position to comment on political decisions, and as an ISAF spokesperson, my mandate ends in Afghanistan. What I can tell you is that ISAF is promoting military-to-military talks on a routinely basis, and that is what we are doing. And we strongly believe that security in the region must include the region in order to move on. So that is what we are doing, and all the other related issues need to be solved by the respective leaderships.
The new government will be taking over now. Do we expect the security situation to improve, and what should the new government and new president do to ensure the situation improves, security situation?
First of all, we need to wait until the end of the election and until we have a new government. And again, I'm pretty convinced that the new government knows exactly what to do in order to promote security and stability in Afghanistan. Without security and stability, there would be no further development. And so this is key for the future, and I'm convinced that all the leaderships, all people working in the government know that that this is something they need to take very seriously.
Well, Afghanistan continues to face a lot of challenges on various fronts, but if we look at the larger picture, it's a better place to live, especially since the intervention of the international community. Where do you see the country 10 years from now?
I'm not in the position to read in a crystal ball, but I can give you some observations I have made in the past years. And what I have seen is that I see young Afghans dedicated to serve in the security forces, dedicated to serve the people of Afghanistan. I have met many young Afghans dedicated to improve other areas within the society, like healthcare, like economy, like education. And this is, from my perspective, very encouraging to see. This shows that the society is moving on. And the fact that so many millions of Afghans went to the polls despite the threats from the militancy is another sign that the society is ready and willing to move on. And that is an encouraging sign from my perspective, and it shows, or it offers excellent opportunities for the future. And it's upon the people of Afghanistan now to take things in their own hand, and they show that they are more than willing to do so.
It's a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for being
thank
honest.
you.